Ladies and gentlemen, man, I am so pumped. I am so excited today. Today is a new day, ladies and gentlemen. But first, let's start off with scripture, right? I always come with scripture the first thing in my first video of every day. So let's get into it. Psalms 35, verses 12 to 17. It says, "They, which is my enemies, rewarded me evil for good, to the spoiling of my soul. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into my own bosom." And as he bowed his head into his chest, he was praying for them. "I behaved myself as though they were my brethren, my brothers, my friends. I bowed down heavily as one that mourned for his mother. But in my adversity they rejoiced and gathered themselves together. Yes, the abjects gathered themselves together against me, and I didn't know. They tore me up and didn't cease. With hypocritical mockers and feast, they gnashed upon me with their teeth, eating him alive. Lord, how long will you look on? Rescue my soul from their destructions, my darling, from the lions." Powerful, huh? Powerful, because that literally reflects the situation we're dealing with. A Zack Snyder film, and it's being torn to shreds every which way, even from people who profess to be Zack Snyder fans. And what I love about Justice League, I literally love it, which is different to those other comic book movies out there, is that Zack Snyder acknowledges the darkness around us. That this world is cynical, it's dark, it's decaying into ruins. And not in the terms of some high-powered alien coming from outer space and coming down and that's the threat to the world. No! Zack Snyder went deeper and he was showing us ourselves. He was showing us human beings like ourselves. Not some one singular diabolical villain. And it's a follow-up from Wonder Woman in that Wonder Woman said it's not one villain to defeat out there and everything cures all ills. No. In this case, just like in this world where people are narcissistic, this movie is getting so much flack because of the narcissism, because of the cynicism of people. People feel like they're betrayed. People feel there's no hope. They feel like somebody's been two-timed. And that's what you're feeling, the darkness. And it's a reality now. And Zack Snyder acknowledges it in his movie Justice League. This is different to every other superhero movie in that he builds a solid platform for hope. The very thing happening to this movie where people are targeting it and ripping at its flesh and eating in only negative news on this movie, is exactly what was happening in the movie. But hope, just a glimmer of hope. When Superman died, he inspired Batman. That's the power of BVS that carries into Justice League. And Batman, all he has is hope. All he has is hope. And that glimmer of hope is what drives him on, knowing there's a threat. And you hear him not deal with all the intrigues when Alfred says to him, "I don't recognize this world." And Batman, Bruce Wayne, says to him, "You don't have to recognize it. You just have to save it." Brilliant! Brilliant! Minimalistic lines, but yet powerful. "I don't recognize this world. You don't have to recognize it. You just have to save it." Hope. In spite of the darkness around us, in spite of the darkness in the media, in spite of the darkness that's going on with this film, there's hope. There's a glimmer of light. And that hope was passed on from Superman in his death to Batman in his life. And it's a hope you have to experience firsthand. If you don't experience it, you can't identify with it. How many of you have gone through very dark portions of your life and you didn't think that you'd make it out the other side? You know why this film appeals to me? I'm going to confess it to you guys if you didn't know. I was suicidal once. I tried to take my own life. Yeah. I tried to kill myself. Were it not for a glimmer of hope through someone else that stopped my life from ending, I wouldn't be here today. So I can fully identify with this movie. I can fully identify with your depressions. See, what general movies in the cinema do, and what a lot of these critics believe movies should do, is form escapism. It should be a route for you to go to an alternative reality and escape and relieve yourself from the stresses of the world. Zack Snyder's films don't let you escape. They acknowledge the realities of this world, and they show you how to man up to them, and they show you the inspiration to drive you onwards, to drive you past these realities which you can overcome. You can be a hero to someone else, a beacon of hope. I just want to make, because this video is not going to be edited, every time I start to swell up a certain energy in the area I live in, something else rises up to try and counterbalance it and resist it. Every time. It's a spiritual thing going on. So here I am talking, and then all of a sudden a phone rings. You know, it happens all the time. Or people just start elevating their voices and yelling in the background. And I say all of this to let you know that when you become hopeful, and when the hope really starts to rise in you, there'll be something to challenge that hope and resist it. Do you know why the odds are so heavily against this movie? Because this movie has something to give to the world. Something that really does matter. A true, solid hope that will empower people and motivate them to take action like I am doing now with this movie and with other things. To become more proactive. When you become hopeful, your faith starts to grow. And when your faith starts to grow, your hope starts to grow. And that's when you become unstoppable. A very interesting thing that Superman said in the beginning is hope is like a river. Positive possibilities change as we move along. And they don't go in a linear fashion, but they wind like a river on Superman's chest. And if you look, there's this pathway on Superman's chest. Let me zoom in on it a little bit more. You can see the little pathway here as it winds. And it's interesting when you really recap Superman's arc from Man of Steel to Justice League. You see a Superman that is actually following this winding path. First, he's a symbol of hope to the world. But even before he became that symbol of hope and he was known as the Superman, he was helping people. He couldn't help himself. Saving lives. But yet, he had to resist saving the life of his father when his father had introduced the idea that he had to keep his identity a secret. So when Superman said, I should have just let them drown in the bus, he said, maybe. And his father paid the ultimate price. He sacrificed so that Superman would understand that the ideal that his father held, that his identity was so precious, was worth dying for. And it's very interesting, the birth of the Superman was called Superman by humans. Just as how Diana is called the Wonder Woman by humans. This is not a name that Superman named himself. He doesn't even call himself Superman. You will never see Superman call himself Superman anywhere. The newspapers will call him the Superman. Other people will call him Superman, like Cyborg, other heroes. But he never calls himself Superman. You know why? Because we are not supposed to thump our chest and praise ourselves for our accolades that we do. We do it because it's the right thing to do. We do it because it needs to be done. And that's the same thing with this movie. This movie's not going to thump its chest. And Zack Snyder's not going to come out and make a statement, probably. What's done is done, and its effect will take effect on people. BVS changed the world. It changed people's mindset. People didn't want to see those things. They didn't want to see Superman die. They didn't want to know about the problems of the world. They came in to escape. And Zack Snyder said, no, you will not escape the reality. You will confront it. You will stand. You will man up. And you will face it. But you won't face it alone. I'll give you the tools that I believe you need to face this present reality. One thing about all Zack Snyder movies I've watched, and the thing that makes it heroic, almost all his movies, in fact, every one of his movies, he has been discussing what makes a hero. If you look at 300, we see the valor, the courage, the bravery of just 300 soldiers. And that is followed up in 300 Rise of the Empire, which shows an account where these 300 soldiers, though they died, they inspired the nation of Greece and all their colonies. This small little colony inspired the nation of Greece to rise up against Persia and defeat the Persian Empire and take over. That's how Greece took over from Persia. When you look at Dawn of the Dead, it's the glimmer of hope of escaping this world that allows these people to survive in a horror film and make it out. Even if it's for a brief moment, they've gotten away from this incredibly scary world of zombies. If you guys think about it, today everyone's like a zombie. They don't speak to another person. They just ingest things and consume, and they're always on their phone. Life is so impersonal. People don't talk to each other anymore. This is your chance. I was discussing it with a guy who actually works in prisons. We went into the cinema together. I was sitting down with him. I was sitting in the row in front of him. And I turned around and I saw him. It was a familiar face to me because I sell drinks on the side of the road. And I saw him and I knew his face. And I started talking with him. And we found out, oh, we communicate with one another. I've seen him. He always is pleasant to me when I'm selling. And I just saw him recently too. And we hailed each other out. And he said, people don't anymore when they go into the cinema. They don't even look to their left or to the right. They can't keep to themselves and their families. And they don't talk to one another anymore. Because today, the world is so cynical that we have to actually look out for someone conning me, or someone following me, or someone being a predator on me, or someone looking to kill you for your stuff and steal things from you. That people have become so guarded, they're not willing to talk to one another. And so it's a precious thing when we can talk to one another online. It is. I'd love to see some of you guys face to face. And yes, I'd be excited to see you, even though it might not show in my body language. I'd be excited to see you. Because you matter. You are the precious thing in this world. And this movie preaches humanism values. And for those people who are Christian, there's Christian values. There's a little bit of Wicca at the end. It's all good. But the point is, at the end of the day, you matter. And you have a whole lot more power than you think you have. And that's what Zack Snyder wants you to tap into. His movies are to make you do things. Wonder Woman has caused a movement in the world. And this movie will do the same. Because whether you believe it or not, I'm inspired and hopeful for this movie, in spite of the darkness surrounding it. Because this movie speaks about that. No other comic book movie has done that. I loved Spider-Man because of Peter Parker's challenges in his personal life. But this movie goes far beyond Peter Parker to people in the world, personalities. Beyond that, to the challenges of people in the world. Zack Snyder shows you actual people in the world and how they're treating one another. And it's exactly how the people in the world today are treating one another. Xenophobia, nationalism, terrorism, all actions of despair and fear. And this movie emphasized on fear versus courage. It emphasized on darkness versus light. And you're in the dark when you don't have hope and you can't find hope. You're searching for it. Something to light your day. And the one thing that lights people's day is entertainment and sports. That's where their hope is still there. And Zack Snyder used the combination of sports in gladiatorial combat and entertainment in the form of films to give you value. That's why I said, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, this is a Zack Snyder film to its core. Because he spoke to me. And he keeps on speaking to me. And that matters, because he reached me. I didn't care about comic book movies. I always thought they were throwaway. But Zack Snyder spoke to me in Man of Steel, and he has never let me down since that time. I've watched every single movie. Batman v Superman, which people call a horrible movie, the theatrical cut, I saw 10 times. I kid you not. I went to the cinema. I went to IMAX. I saw it 10 times. Because that movie, it spoke to my very essence. It spoke to my soul. Man of Steel, I didn't believe a Superman film could do that. It spoke to my essence. It spoke to my soul. And Justice League as a collective film in which Superman shines so brightly, showing you that Zack Snyder loves Superman. He loves Superman. And no, as much as you guys want to say Joss Whedon edited scenes and it's Joss Whedon's Superman, that is not Joss Whedon's Superman. That is Zack Snyder's Superman. Alright? I'm telling you now, Zack Snyder may have had more to say with this Superman and a little bit more background. But believe you me, every scene, even the reshoots Whedon did, are Zack Snyder's Superman. This is his vision for Superman. Henry Cavill was pretty clear on that, even though he liked how Joss Whedon directed certain parts. This is Zack Snyder's Superman. Don't make a mistake with that. And that's the awesome thing about this movie. But hope is like a river. It winds. And Superman in this movie, he goes through so many different things. First, on a broader scale, after he reveals himself to the world and the world names him Superman, he takes action. He takes charge. Because he tells the world, you can't control me. And you never will. But that doesn't mean I'm your enemy. And he works alongside mankind. He surrenders himself to mankind. He has to deal with this challenge, which is someone like himself, a Kryptonian like himself, who wants him to turn himself in. And the beauty of this is, Superman is now being this symbol of hope that Jor-El has been telling him. And in the Kryptonian ship, in the heart of the invader, in the heart, listen to me carefully, guys, in the heart of the invader, in the heart of adversity, in the heart of a nightmare that he sees, in the worst case scenario, Superman's father pops up and tells him, you can save them all, Kal. You can save her. You can save them all, Kal. At the end of the darkest night is the brightest day. Jor-El infused hope in Kal-El. At the time, Kal-El was now embracing this symbol of hope, his father's vision for him. He had not come full circle to embrace hope as his own. He was embracing it through his father's eyes. And Jor-El gets inspired after that nightmare against General Zod, after being weakened on the Kryptonian ship. Hope comes back to Kal-El. And he goes and he saves Lewis, saves his mother, saves the village of Smallville, even though there's a lot of damage. But when gods fight, that's what happens. And he saves the general. And the general, who is antagonistic to aliens, he says, this man, not alien, this man is not our enemy. Hope is like a river. Hope is like a river. How many of you today, people misjudge you? They think you're an enemy because of your skin color, because of where you live. You may be a person who lives in the country area. You talk a certain way and they think you're dumb, and they think you're racist, or they think you're trash. Oh no, you're not. Oh no, you're not. You've got something beautiful to give to this world. This man, he didn't call him this thing. He didn't call him this alien. This man is not our enemy. And Superman absorbs that deeply within his soul, and he says, thank you, General. And he flies up into the sky. Hope. Hope. Why didn't they call him Super Alien or God from Outer Space? No. They called him Superman because he was more of a man and showed us what humanity could be at its best. Jor-El said, you'll give them an ideal to strive towards. They'll stumble. They'll fall. But in time, they'll join you in the sun. In time, Kal, you'll help them accomplish wonders. Justice League is the fulfillment of that. Justice League is the fulfillment of that. Hope is like a river. So Kal-El goes on to save mankind at the end of Man of Steel. But there's tremendous collateral damage, because General Zod goes to terraform the Earth, and is in epic proportions, and the first destruction is Metropolis. The other place is in the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, which nobody really lives there, so there's not much damage there. But when it comes to Metropolis, there was tremendous damage, tremendous lives lost. No fault of Kal-El's, he was trying his best. Only been Superman for a day. But the beauty of this is this, that being heroic or being a hero is not about getting applause and people giving you a Medal of Honor. That's not what makes you a hero. Being a hero is realizing what the right thing is and being willing to sacrifice yourself to see that happen, to see people not be oppressed. You may fail. In Wonder Woman, she saved the town and then the people were killed. Does that make her any less of a hero because she couldn't stop the second destruction of them? No. You see, doing the right thing, you do it not because the consequences of the right thing may be favorable to you. People may condemn you. They may hate you for doing the right thing. That's real. That's what happens in reality. It's not you do the right thing and everybody's comfy and everybody goes home. Fairy tale. The escapists want that. The critics want that. Zack Snyder says, no, you're not going to get that from me. You're not going to get that from me. And you know, at the end of Justice League, the beautiful thing is, we still don't know what the world thinks about Superman and these heroes. We know what they think of Wonder Woman, but we still don't know if they still have mixed views on them. And how are these heroes It would be beautiful to see Justice League 2 because I think Zack Snyder still has more story to tell of how the world, it begins to realize that it needs these heroes, but it still has its cynicism. It still has its narcissism. It's still going on, not at a great extent like it used to be. Because no matter how heroic you are, today people see you as a hero, and tomorrow they see you as a villain. That's the world we live in. They praise you one day, and they attack you the next. I'll give you a perfect example. Everyone was praising George W. Bush for going into Iraq. Then soon the news came out that he was starting a war that shouldn't have even been started. And they condemned him the next time. And I'm not saying they didn't have validity to condemn him, but one day you're a hero, next day you're a villain. It's the same you. The guy from 60 Minutes who's being praised for his broadcast, he's on Bloomberg, he's everywhere, he's a very thoughtful guy. People find out about his past and how he sexually assaulted and took advantage of women. They praise you one day, they condemn you the next. They don't know how to separate the person's contributions in society, which were positive, from some of the abhorrible acts that person may have said or done. And we have to be able to do that. We don't just hate people completely. Joss Whedon, he's a, every scene that Joss Whedon did cheapened the film. No, you have to be able to separate what Joss Whedon has done in his past from what he's doing now. You have to judge people fairly on their merits, acknowledging their shortcomings. And Superman was unfairly judged, and some people hated him and said he's not a hero in BVS. And people wanted, you saw them saying, hang him, hang him, hang him. And Superman flew off. People were thinking that Superman collaborated. You know, the media, negative news sells fast. It flies fast. So on the media, all we're seeing is negative things about Superman. Just like with this movie now. You look at it, only the negative news is selling. Because people have gotten so used to being narcissistic, skeptical of everything, that they hold on to things which are negative. That's the subject to discuss. And we see a reflection of our world in Batman v Superman. We didn't like it. We wanted Kool-Aid. We wanted hee-hee-ha-ha. We wanted to relieve stress. And Zack Snyder's giving us more stress. And Batman v Superman, I heard a guy just recently there, I was looking at reviews, and he was saying, Batman v Superman had a profound impact on Justice League's box office. Yes, it has a profound effect on Justice League, the movie. But just because you saw yourself in Batman v Superman and you didn't like what you saw, doesn't mean that that movie affected this movie in box office. Otherwise, if that's true, then it would have affected Wonder Woman in box office. I'm just saying. It affects Suicide Squad in box office. No. It's not mainly that. It's fans. People who decided to hold on to the negativity, the darkness, the despair, the hopefulness, the sad story, the tragedy. They intended to hold on to that instead of what Zack Snyder brings. In BVS, the hero is still hopeful, but Superman, for a moment in time, he's surrounded by darkness when he realizes he couldn't prevent the bombing of those people in the building. That's what broke the camel's back. He was cool with how people were thinking about him because he was doing the right thing, because he knew it was the right thing to do. But when it came to the fact that he found himself powerless to avoid a situation, he became hopeless. Nothing that Lois Lane could say to him. Hope is like a river. Sometimes the river almost dries up. The stream, the pathway, it just winds like a little trickle between the rocks. And Superman needed to take time out and process that. In the meantime, the world was running amok on Superman. Oh, he's evil! He collaborated with the killers! Stop him! Kill him! And of course, Batman, fueled by hopelessness, fueled by fear, fueled by rage, these things overcame Batman, and he became like Lex Luthor. He could not reason. He could not see. If you haven't read Death in the Family, that's exactly what happened to Batman. He was going down the road of moral bankruptcy, killing people and just going focused on getting that kryptonite. And Superman had also lost sight of hope. The world was in an extremely dark place. But there were people in that world who shook their heads when they saw all the negative news on Superman, because they knew he was a beacon of hope. They knew he was a beacon of life, and they knew he was going through a rough time. And you saw the little kid as he looked at the television, and he looked to his mom with his eyes open wide, like, oh my God, they're thinking of hanging Superman. And she says, no, he's not like that. No, he's not like that. The firemen who saw Superman saving people out of the building shook their heads too and said, no, he's not like that. They could see the virtue of this guy. He was trying so hard to do the right thing. And I feel for Zack Snyder, because that's what he was trying to get to people. He was trying so hard to get you to see that even though you do the right thing, sometimes people will still try to destroy you. And they may succeed. And the DCU is so precious to me in that I can see this happening to the DCEU. And I can see the manic people trying to feed off its bones. And they're trying to feed because they're filled with fear. They're trying to feed because they know it has hope in it, but they don't know how to react. Because they're so filled with cynicism and darkness and skepticism that when they see the real deal, they wonder about it. And the first thing they want to do is put a negative tag on it, because people hate what they don't understand. So, I read that scripture, and the scripture lines up with the story. And I know a little bit about being misunderstood. And I guess some of you guys do too. And I was hoping that Justice League, Joss Whedon, would be able to make clear what Zack Snyder's doing as this trilogy wraps up to a close. But it's lost on the people, the irony, who claim they best understand his movies. And it hurts deep inside when someone who you've confided everything into, someone who was trying to fight with you, they turn against you. It's sad. Over some small, insignificant detail. The virtue in this movie is so deep because hope is like a river. It doesn't go in a straight line. Possibilities are not locked down to one particular thing, guys. So why is it that you had to have expectations and hope for this movie that had to follow along a certain format? Hope is like a river. It changes. Possibilities and things change all the time. So, Superman, he's in a dilemma. He feels powerless. He feels like every good thing he tries to do ends up being something worse than it began in BVS. He wonders, what's the use? Why try it all? He's broken. He's in a very dark place. For those people who give up on life, for whatever reason. It's because they wonder, why keep on going? They may be very good people, very nice people, trying very hard. But they just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They can't see it anymore. And they give up. So Superman went through that. It's a part of humanity. People give up so many different ways. Some people just exist in this world today. Their soul is everything but dead. You know, I don't know how you guys read scripture and understand it, but you can be walking around like a zombie. You could be there, but all your hopes, your dreams, what makes you alive is gone. You're just a shell. Might as well be a parademon. This movie means a lot to a lot of people, including me. Because Superman came back from that. He found sight of hope again. That conversation with his father, he realizes there are people in this world who believe in you. They believe in you. And they believe you can do some really nice things in this world. They believe you're sincere. They believe you have something to offer, and they see it in you. And they'll ride with you to the end. Some people you don't even know. And so he finds hope again through Lois Lane and his mother. He realizes hope is not a thing where the outcomes are always good. But it doesn't mean you don't hope. It doesn't mean you don't try. If it's worth it, you do it. Maybe you'll never live to see the payoff. Maybe it'll get scrapped. But you do it. This is something I'm pretty sure Zack Snyder truly believes. And Chris Terrio penned it out. It's priceless, folks. Because that really is how life is. Many a time, you fail. And you fail again. And you fail again. But if you keep hope, eventually you'll succeed. And if you never succeed, it was worth it to give it a shot instead of quitting and giving up and just being a zombie in this world. That's humanity at its best potential, folks. That's why I hope in this movie. I hope. This movie's all about hope. And no matter what happens to people, life, this world, keep on hoping. Be a believer. She said, I believe. She said, I'm a believer. That mankind can get to that place of light and tap into the light more than the darkness in their souls. She said it. And then she continued on talking about being a believer in Justice League. Hope is like a river. it flows. It changes directions, but it flows. And Superman was able to regain his hope through remembering the person he loved. Love, hope, faith. These are the three things that show the best of ourselves. And Superman would continue living as Superman. He comes back and he saves the object of his affections, Lois Lane. And he has to face up against Batman. He's immediately thrust into a dilemma to test his resolve. His resolve to give hope in spite of everything. And he faces the very challenge that tests that resolve. The very people who hate him. He faces it in Batman. Batman hates Superman. He symbolizes everything that everyone around him that detracts him and wants to see him hang is. He's filled with fear for Superman. The possibility that Superman could do something and kill everyone. In truth, Superman is very powerful. And Batman tries to stop him. And in so doing, Superman's at the boot of Batman's foot. As Batman asks Superman for his last words and says, "You're not even a god. You're not even a man." But this time, Superman doesn't believe in hope for humanity through his father's eyes. It now forces him to believe in hope for humanity through his own eyes, to personalize it, and to have that conviction to move forward no matter what. And Superman now says something that's more Superman-y than any other thing he's done. As Batman is about to kill Superman and stab him with the kryptonite spear, Superman says, You're letting him kill Martha. Save Martha." That's the most powerful moment in BVS. The most powerful moment. It's a turning point. It's a turning point in this movie. It's the moment when Superman's hope conquers the darkness. All this time, there had been darkness opposing the light. The light had been challenged. Superman had saved Metropolis, but a lot of people died and they blamed Superman for it. Superman was blamed for killing some terrorist leaders. Even people who watched the movie were accusing him of that. They accused him of being emo Superman. They accused him of being a dark Superman. They accused him of being a murderer. And there were false witnesses that came up to him. Again, from this scripture, you saw the same thing. And Superman is now facing face to face with the darkness, the dark side of mankind, the hopeless, the fearful, the despair, the hateful side of mankind in Batman. He epitomizes that. And for one point in time in this movie, as in almost every Zack Snyder movie, I feel like Batman is going to kill Superman. And then he says, "You're letting him kill Martha. Save Martha." And that speaks to Batman's conscience. And that's the turning point for Batman. Batman is beginning to spark hope. Now, let me just be clear on you. Wonder Woman also helped him to spark hope because, first of all, he was attracted to her. Then she stole the thing from him. He had to track her down. And by doing so, his mind was constantly this is a subliminal message, he's constantly focusing on her. So when he finds out that she's 100 years old, he knows she's not normal. He knows she's some kind of metahuman. And then he finds all these other metahumans, and he realizes Superman's not the only metahuman. He's not the only god. So all of this is going on in Batman's mind in the background. And Wonder Woman's key in this. So she has an impact on him. But the one who turns him from that path of darkness and despair and fear into courage is Superman. And this is the birth of Superman. The real birth of Superman. The world called him Superman, but now he has owned up. He has fully embraced Superman. And the only thing left to do was embrace mortality. And Superman's not afraid anymore. And so because he's not afraid anymore, the final act that he does is he lays down his life for a world which is conflicted about him by not only slaying Doomsday, and Doomsday is the Doomsday. You get it? Doomsday. The Doomsday. When, we talk about the Doomsday Clock and we talk about, Doomsday symbolizes the end of mankind. That we're heading down that pathway rapidly. We're destroying the climate. We're fighting one another. We may be on the verge of a nuclear war. Superman, Hope, destroys Doomsday. But in so doing, he loses his life. And Hope dies. And people mourn it. And now we come to Justice League. And the song Everybody Knows tells us about, it's a very narcissistic and skeptical song, speaking about our hope dying. And it says, everybody knows that the game is fixed, that the rich will be rich, and the poor will be poor. Everybody wants those bundle of roses, but everybody can't get it. It's a very socially conscious song at the beginning of the movie. People are in tatters, they're in despair, even though they're trying to motivate one another by saying, if you want his monument, look around you. Truly, as people came together to mourn his loss and realize that the light had just been snuffed out, a light that they had, as they start to mourn the loss, they become fearful. They start to lose hope. And they become desperate. That's the world we meet. Now, we could say, we did that. We destroyed the hope. We snuffed out the hope. We had it. We didn't value it. We were quarreling and squabbling over it, and then it got snuffed out. Pretty much like what could happen with this movie. And pretty much what I started doing what the people in that movie did. I started to attack the people who they were sad about what they saw, because what they saw was not what they expected. But that's not the approach we should have. What people need is inspiration in this cynical, narcissistic world. They need to be inspired. They need hope. And I guarantee you this movie gives that. And it's interesting how in the void of hope, people fall further and further down the path of darkness and fear, like Batman did in Batman v Superman. But this time, it's because they have no hope to hold on to. Hope is like a river. It winds and it turns. First, Superman was challenged. The beacon of hope was challenged. And now the world is being challenged in a world without Superman. In Man of Steel, there was a world without Superman. And now we come back and we get another world without Superman. And in so doing, Zack Snyder highlights some of the beacons of light in this world, like David Bowie, Michael Jackson, and Prince. These guys spoke about the world in metaphors. They tried to highlight certain things about ourselves, and they used theatrics. They weren't just empty entertainment. Oh, she pop, she lock, she pop, she pop. No. Hell no. It was going to be deep. You'll find that the masses, in order to ease their stress, they go into some very fickle things. But really, the masses never learn through media how to be empowered, how to make a change, how to make changes in life, the change engines. Since civics is out of the schools, people are not aware and socially conscious about things anymore. They prefer to drown themselves in their own individual lives, access information as much as possible, but not interact with one another on a daily basis. Social media was supposed to bring us together, not to squabble and be in our own factions, but to join different sections of the world together so that we could collaborate and work together, make the world a better place. But like Wonder Woman said in Justice League, technology doesn't always work to the advantage of mankind. Many times, it works to their peril. Terrorists use social networks to group people together in masses of hate. So anyway, hope is like a river. And Superman is dead. But when Superman died, that hope was birthed in Batman. It began when Superman said, "Save Martha" to him, and it blew up like a fire in him when he died. Batman realized how good Superman was. And he said, "I have failed him in life. I won't fail him in death." That was almost a vow. And speaking to Wonder Woman, he said, "Help me find the others like you." And she said, "What if they don't want to be found?" He said, "They will, and they'll fight." This is the first time we hear about fighting. And fighting for hope is what so many people, so many hundreds of years ago did. The United States of America is built on hope. They liberated themselves from the British and fought a battle against the British to be free. They didn't fight to defeat the British. They fought to be free. There's a difference between the goal of fighting and actual fighting. A lot of times these superhero movies fight a villain to defeat the villain. They say, and defend the earth. But what Justice League does that's different, and Wonder Woman, it says this movie's not about fighting the villain, which is why everybody wanted to focus on the villain. They weren't trying to focus on. This movie was about creating hope. And so the stories of each of these individual characters comes from a dark place. Flash's mother was murdered, allegedly by his father. He was trying to free his father. A dark place. Cyborg had been in a freak accident. He had lost everything in his body. And he'd come back this freaky monster, this Frankenstein. Aquaman was an alien to Earthworld and Atlantis. He's a foreigner, an outsider. They all come from dark places. And this unlikely band of heroes is bound together. Wonder Woman, from the loss of Steve Trevor, she's in the darkness and the shade, hopeful, but doesn't want to step out and lead anymore because of her losses. And this unlikely band of heroes in a dark and cynical world, come together because of Batman's hope and fire that burns within him, even though he doesn't have the tools to bring these guys together to face a threat. And the threat is Steppenwolf and the Parademons. And as we go through the journey, if you listen to the dialogue of the Justice League movie, which the dialogue is really on point, it's not very verbose, or another Chris Terrio, Zack Snyder kind of thing. But what's very interesting too is that these heroes fight. They don't come together immediately. They don't agree with one another. They have different points of views. They have all kinds of issues. But in their interaction with one another, they begin to see that they can do something positive. It's an empowering movie because Wonder Woman's able to show Cyborg he can do something beautiful. And that the hurt he has inside can actually be converted into something of hope. That he has gifts. And though as painful as those gifts are, he has them and should use them. In the case of the Flash, he's inspired by Superman already. When he meets Batman, he has someone he can talk with. He's in dire need of friendship. He's alone in the world. And as much as it's hilarious and funny, he's very, very fragile as a person. And so he's very clingy. He clings to Batman. He fans out on everything. He tries to cling to Cyborg and get friendship. He's like desperately trying to get friendship with anyone. And he's just so happy. Okay, until he has to fight. Then he gets petrified. He's really, really afraid. And Aquaman. Aquaman is soft on the inside, hard on the outside. And he finally finds a home among this unlikely group of metahumans, excluding Batman. And Batman has to lead a team that he's not capable of leading. He does not know how to lead and motivate these people. But he tries because hope, that positive possibility, drives him. And you see as the movie progresses how much more Batman becomes hopeful. He knows it's a necessity that he does the Batman-y thing and stops a possible disaster, which is what he's good at doing. But even more, past his detective work, past his interactions with Alfred, who's always been right, by the way, Batman is starting to regain, in a better way, what he had lost. You hear Commissioner Gordon say, "I see you're working well with others." He said that may be temporary. But the funny thing about it is, he's actually working along with other people. Something a loner does not do. Batman's philosophy is the same as Aquaman. The strongest man is strongest alone. And so it's just amazing when Superman's hope, which is what Batman v Superman is, if you look, is the Superman shield in the heart of the bat symbol. Superman's hope is now imprinted on Batman. And Batman could have just walked around in Superman's cape. I mean, his clothing and his cape. That's what he was trying to be. And you could see he desperately realized he lacked certain things. And he would keep on saying, "We are not enough. It's not enough." He's intuitive enough and calculating enough to understand that. And because of Batman's hope, he argues for a risky case among the Justice League to bring back Superman. And that hope, if Batman didn't end BVS with that hope, people talk about, "I never heard of no hopeful Batman," and blah, blah. If Batman didn't end BVS with that hope, Superman never would have come back. Hope is like a river. It's not predictable. It flows, and the possibilities change. And when Superman came back in this movie, all of you guys felt it. His power. His peacefulness. Even when he was evil, when he landed down on the steps, you could see how calm he was. And then he got disoriented and he got a little bit crazy. But the point is, he was calmed down by Lois Lane, who saved his life again. For the umpteenth time. And the beautiful thing about this is, once Superman came back, hope came back. Now, they didn't show hope for the entire world necessarily, even though we saw the police officers and they looking up in the sky as Superman's coming down. And you could see in their face this, "I don't believe it" moment. But Superman attacks the police. I mean, he's wreaking havoc before he's gotten out of there by Lois Lane. Okay, and is he powerful or what, folks? When hope comes back in full force, when people can see all the possibilities in front of them, that this doesn't have to go this way. When you guys realize that the narrative for Justice League doesn't have to go that way, you have something you can do about it. When you realize the power you have. This film will make money because of the people who love this movie. These people who like this movie. If they do something, that's all you have to do is do something. You got the numbers. And what do you have to do? What does anybody who likes something do? They talk about it. They enjoy it. They relish in it. And people will feel that joy and relish off of you and the good word of mouth, and they'll go see it. They'll be curious. That's all. It's really that simple. But, and invite people to go see it. And this movie is going to change lives, and I think it's starting a movement. There's going to be a real life Justice League out there for truth and justice. When we see all these women coming out in the Me Too movement and finally finding the courage to speak up about what happened to them, that's justice. It took sometimes 30-something years for that to happen, but it's happening. It's happening. And I think this movie is going to spark a movement. I really, truly believe so. Because I'm not going to go quietly into the night. I'm not going to go quietly into the night. I'm sorry. I'm not going quiet. I'm going to make a lot of noise. If I'm not going quietly into the night. This movie is too valuable. It's too important today for it to just be dismissed like that. I'm going to make a lot of noise. And I advise you guys to do the same. Open your mouth. Let your voice be heard. This was Zack Snyder's vision. And it gives you a journey of hope. Hope is like a river. Sometimes it looks like it's waning, and it looks like it's because of the season. Sometimes snow comes and it freezes over. It's not moving, it seems. You can't see past certain things. But keep the hope. Because sometimes positive possibilities are not visible. And it looks like you're not moving anywhere. You're just beating time on one spot. But you're growing. You're developing. You're getting stronger. Sometimes hope looks like it's dead. Superman looked like he was dead. But as the saying says in the trailer or in the poster, hope never dies. Even in the darkest night, hope is there. After General Zod had hold Superman captive, wrecked his brain, and was leaving him for dead, Jor-El showed up. The atmosphere changed. When Superman had died and the world was mourning and the world was going down into hell, and because of this hellish nature and the fear and the mother boxes, Steppenwolf took on the opportunity and the invasion was starting. But Batman got Superman's hope. BVS! That S on Batman's chest. That's right. Yo! And it carried over into Justice League. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful trilogy, Zack Snyder. Assisted in the end in a beautiful way, in a unity with Joss Whedon. Marvel and DC unite. This is a much more powerful movie than if Zack Snyder was to make this movie alone with Junkie XL. As much as I didn't like that Junkie XL was kicked off the project. And hope is like a river. Sometimes things don't work smoothly and they don't work the way you plan. I'm still hopeful for this movie. In fact, my hope is forming into a faith that this movie will do well. I believe this movie will do well. Once we activate and we empower others and ourselves. This movie means too much for it to go silently into the night. No, 850 million is not enough. We are not enough. We need more. More. More people. More. Guys, hope is like a river. It flows. And when it starts to gush over and that river really starts to fill up and flow and get deep, it flows into the sea. The sea is the sea of humanity. And it supplies water to the sea. And I'm telling you guys, the flood is coming. Oh, it's coming. The awakening has happened already, but now the flood is coming. It's coming, folks. Keep hope alive. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You guys have a great one.